Playoff dreams are still alive as we enter Week 8. We'll see which teams can pull off miracle runs and which orgs fall short. Earlier, Lyra and Apollo were preparing for their first match today against Altec and Equifox, who I'm sure are not sleeping.
They're ready for the games
today. Just about ready, but we'll see it soon enough. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the AntiLCS Countdown, where for 30 minutes we gauge the hopes of the bottom half teams and share some tier lists until the timer reaches 0 and we jump into Champion Select. Only 2 weeks of LCS left. Man, time really flies.
Well, LOL.
All right, now the playoff picture is far from locked, but let's look at how our teams stand going into Week 8. Equifox and Cloud9, they hold on to first and second, but have yet to acquire their buys for that playoff postseason. Clutch Gaming in third have locked their spot in the postseason, while 100 Thieves, Team Liquid, and TSM could do the same if they pick up wins this weekend. Every game today could shake up the standings as we know it, starting with Clutch Gaming versus Equifox, with Optic Gaming playing for their postseason dreams versus Cloud9. Tune in to Riot Games 2 for Game 4, where Kobe, Reggie, and Steve will be bringing you TSM versus Team Liquid from the NALCS Lounge. Now, the result of that NALCS Lounge stream matchup will narrow down the playoff picture for a lot of teams.
Yeah, I mean, Team Liquid can lock their playoff spot if FlyQuest wins against COG and they win against TSM, but the problem is all of those teams have been ridiculously unreliable and inconsistent, so maybe it's 1 in 4 that those two things happen with the way things are going, because Team Liquid, even though they've looked great at times with a lot of fast victories, have been unable to string cohesive wins together or come from behind.
And one of the things that we saw during their game, they talked about the stats of how they have never won when down like 1.5K gold, whatever it is, at 20 minutes. That's not a substantial deficit, so you should be able to come back from those games. So TL is this huge feast or famine team, and in their game 1 against them, it was a big feast. They destroyed TSM in the first game of the season.
Hoping it'll go better this time around, TSM that is. Let's talk about their playoff hopes here.
Yeah, and they can't lock a playoff spot tomorrow, but they will. But a win from them really makes it hard for FlyQuest, Optic, and Golden Guardians to actually make a run and catch them for that 6th spot, because that will just make that gap even bigger.
Yeah, and then at that point, their main competition would be COG. But TSM is absolutely in control of their own destiny, since they do have a 2-game gap on the next closest team, which would be COG. And even though they are sitting at 7-7, it does feel like they are steadily improving throughout the split, even if that improvement is much slower than many people expect it to be, when so many people were expecting them to just click from day 1.
I mean, you said something really key there, though. You kind of snuck it in there. They are in control of their own destiny. For a lot of the teams that are currently in the top 6, it's entirely up to them. You win out, and you're in the postseason. There it is. Now, with the impact this game will have on the postseason, let's add a little side quest to the prediction game that we normally play by looking at how you two think the playoff picture will look come Week 9. So first up on the board, we got Mark's playoff prediction.
Yeah, and it felt a little bit like TSM and TL are on a little bit of a collision course for each other, where if TL wins this matchup, it pushes them closer to 3rd and TSM closer to 6th. But when you look at the remaining strength of schedule, it becomes a bit difficult. I think 100 Thieves have clearly one of the easier ones, so I'm taking them there. TL and Clutch will drop games back and forth. Same with TSM, so I expect the standings to mostly stay the same for me.
Yeah, and when I did this last night, I tried to do my best to predict every remaining game and then just see where the standings would fall. And this looks a lot different than Mark's, because I have TSM in 3, he had
They're
TSM
making a
in
run
6.
then, huh?
That could be 1 game different.
Wow.
Because if TSM goes 4-0, they would be at 11-7, and then in this scenario, have them winning a tiebreak against 100 Thieves.
Okay.
If they lose one of those games, they could move to 6th.
Okay.
Because that would put 100 Thieves at 11-7 and the other teams at 10-8.
So the margin for error here
are incredibly close to each other. They all play each other a lot.
Right, yeah.
So their results against those teams have a large swing. And the boldest prediction, I'd say, if TSM is to be 3rd, would be that they could beat C9 tomorrow. But who knows? I've seen stranger things in this year.
Right, their Week 9 gets easier if they can get through Week 8. Technically, looking over at 100 Thieves, though, as well, again, this is a team that's trying to defend and stay near the top side of that. Their strength of schedule, much easier Week 8, much tougher Week 9.
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing here. And Clutch is one of these teams that we've said hasn't beaten other playoff teams yet. So even though they are the 3rd seed and the 9-5, very good record, it's not necessarily an unwinnable game. Whereas I look at, like you said, that C9 one, even the TL one to an extent, that looks like a tougher matchup than 100 Thieves versus Clutch. Equifox, obviously, really hard to expect to win there, but there's 3 very conceivable wins there on the board for them.
And there's also a chance that by the time they play Equifox, they've locked in the 1st seed of the whole playoffs. So you wonder if they'd be putting in subs or doing something weird in that final game.
Right, everything can get shaken up in these last couple weeks. We'll see how the teams perform leading into the split. And now, while she won't be available in the LCS, over on live service, Kaisa has been added to the champion roster. So to hear more about the Daughter of the Void, let's send it over to Freak, who circled up with some of the team that brought you League's newest hyper carry.
Hey everyone, welcome. We are here to talk about Kaisa. I'm David Ficturley, joined by two people involved in her production. If you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, I'm Jeevan Sidhu, aka Riot Jag, and I'm the champion designer in Kaisa.
I'm Robert Lee, aka Robert X Lee. I am the main playtester on Kaisa.
And your history before Kaisa, Challenger AD carry, also LCS on Complexity. Got a couple of wins?
Just a few. Early season challenger as well. I expect to drop to D1 in a couple months.
But for now, you're the best player on this stage by a lot, because no one else is behind you, so we're good. We're in a good spot right here. Okay, so let's talk about Kaisa. She exists. She is live on 8.5. Sadly, she will, we'll get to that in a little bit. She's live on 8.5. She exists. She's super fun. Why did you make Kaisa the way you did?
Right, I wanted to make a really aggressive ADC this year, and we hadn't done that in a few years. Something, short range, high mobility, high aggression. And so the primary motivation for me there was maybe we could try an assassin-y take on an ADC where we hadn't really done that the perfect execution before. And also we wanted to try something that had really cool synergy with CC and could make plays off of other like high CC supports and still do a lot of damage, carry the damage and load for a team.
Yeah, and did that work for you?
Yep, I think all of that is true. A lot of times you would just kind of like go in as Kaisa, just jumping into the back line, looking for like the assassination attempt, playing off of like ally CC, and either killing them or dying for it. Yeah,
there's a lot of void spotting in our playtest.
Yeah. I do want to bring up builds as well, because it seems you can evolve. It's probably just like pick 2 of the 3 as far as evolves are concerned. Right. But we're recording this Wednesday morning, so we haven't had a lot of time to see what people are experimenting with on live. But what do you kind of see being her core builds and core play style?
Right, so the whole Voltron triple evolve build, that's probably not a good idea. Yeah. I think most people will probably evolve Q or E first in the ADC role and build moderately conventional ADC items like Blade of the Ruined King, Infinity Edge, Shiv. You could try Ginsu's if you really want to go for more tank busting. And some people can try her AP where she's kind of a poke monster. I think that'll be a secondary build, but maybe has some potential.
You see being a full mage? Cap second item, W poke?
We have tried with W builds. It tends to just be pretty weak. it's tuned pretty weak and
good ARAM build.
Yeah, it's more. Yeah, I would say that's more like that.
I gotta say, it's easy to stack in ARAM since everyone's got the hard crowd control to make it work for you guys. So I do want to move in then to how she's going to work in competitive. Again, we're still in 8.4 this weekend as we're talking right now. She will not be enabled for NA and EU LCS throughout week 9 and the playoffs just because of the rules. She will be enabled for China and Korea though, because their playoffs going to be 8.6 and that's just how the rules kind of shake out. So do you expect to see her played in Asia in competitive? Kaisa?
I'm not sure. I'd say if this meta continues where you have a lot of tanks with a lot of CC, she's really great with that because she provides a crazy amount of DPS, especially when your team is adding her passive stacks with CC. And also if teams feel like their ADC is really a point of emphasis for their team, they might pick her because she's fairly high agency in the role for that.
Yeah, I think with how engages with you see the Sejuani, you see the Zac, they're very instant, and Kaisa being able to follow up on that engage, being the first to act, being able to pick off core carries, and will be extremely valuable.
We'll see if she works as a sidekick to a tank and some hard dives. Thank you both very much for your time. Back to you, Dash.
Thank you very much, Free. Going to be a while till we here on the NALCS see this champion, but what are your guys' kind of preliminary thoughts on Kaisa?
It's interesting to hear them talk about how well she combos with tanks and being good in the tank meta, because she has great follow-up, which is sometimes what you're lacking with AD carries, but traditionally,
AD carries are terrified.
Assassins are not good into tanks. So if it's a tank meta and she's low range and then she just gets Maokai W, she doesn't have that many defensive tools, it's well, I'm dead. So I'm going to be really interested to see if her strengths play to getting CC from teammates or if it's going to hurt her with her range in those kinds of situations.
I think she's going to be pretty good as a jungler. I know Zyrene has been spamming her a lot with Black Cleaver and Warrior as 2 of the main items. It's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I heard you guys talking about it yesterday while we were walking around
Black
campus.
Cleaver instant stacks with Q.
Exactly, and then double evolve. I heard Nashor's Tooth can sometimes work its way into that build. Message Zyrene. I'm sure Zyrene would love to talk about it. We're stepping away. When we return, fans and analysts alike share their bot laner tier list, and we focus in on the first match of the day. The NALCS Countdown continues after the break. Playoff dreams are still alive as we enter Week 8. We'll see which teams can pull off miracle runs and which orgs fall short. Earlier, Lyra and Apollo were preparing for their first match today against Alltech and EchoFox, who I'm sure are not sleeping.
They're ready for the games
today. Just about ready, but we'll see it soon enough. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the AntiLCS Countdown, where for 30 minutes we gauge the hopes of the bottom half teams and share some tier lists until the timer reaches 0 and we jump into Champion Select. Only 2 weeks of LCS left. Man, time really flies.
Well,
LOL.
All right, now the playoff picture is far from locked, but let's look at how the teams stand going into Week 8. EchoFox and Cloud9, they hold on to first and second, but have yet to acquire their buys for that playoff postseason. Clutch Gaming in third have locked their spot in the postseason, while 100 Thieves, Team Liquid, and TSM could do the same if they pick up wins this weekend. Every game today could shake up the standings as we know it, starting with Clutch Gaming versus EchoFox, with Optic Gaming playing for their postseason dreams versus Cloud9. Tune in to Riot Games 2 for Game 4, where Kobe, Reggie, and Steve will be bringing you TSM versus Team Liquid from the NALCS Lounge. Now, the result of that NALCS Lounge stream matchup will narrow down the playoff picture for a lot of teams.
Yeah, I mean, Team Liquid can lock their playoff spot if FlyQuest wins against COG and they win against TSM, but the problem is all of those teams have been ridiculously unreliable and inconsistent, so maybe it's 1 in 4 that those two things happen with the way things are going, because Team Liquid, even though they've looked great at times with a lot of fast victories, have been unable to string cohesive wins together or come from behind.
And one of the things that we saw during their game, they talked about the stats of how they have never won when down like 1.5K gold or whatever it is at 20 minutes. That's not a substantial deficit, so you should be able to come back from those games. So TL is this huge feast or famine team, and in their game 1 against them, it was a big feast. They destroyed TSM in the first game of the season.
Hoping it'll go better this time around, TSM that is. Let's talk about their playoff hopes here.
Yeah, and they can't lock a playoff spot tomorrow, but they will. But a win from them really makes it hard for FlyQuest, Optic, and Golden Guardians to actually make a run and catch them for that 6th spot, because that will just make that gap even bigger.
Yeah, and then at that point, their main competition would be COG. But TSM is absolutely in control of their own destiny, since they do have a 2-game gap on the next closest team, which would be COG. And even though they are sitting at 7-7, it does feel like they are steadily improving throughout the
Definitely Sneaky. I'd probably put him first and then probably Double second.
Yeah, I'd give it to Sneaky. I wouldn't. I'd give it to Sneaky. And then number 2, Double Lift. Number 3, that's a tough spot. That's a really tough spot. There's a lot of really good ADCs out there. But Sven, yeah, you think Sven? Yeah, Sven's pretty good.
I would probably say Sneaky, to be honest.
Sneaky, probably. I would say definitely number 1. Definitely believe Sven can get there, but Cody Sven. Cody Sven.
Oh. Cody. Welcome back to the NALCS Countdown. We've made our way back out to the arena to do some tier lists. You heard from the fans. Seems like there was a pretty big consensus that Sneaky tops the list. But I do want to see how fan sentiment compares to the sentiment of our 2 analysts up here. So let's throw the list up onto the board. Boom!
Luckily, no disagreements with Sneaky at the top.
All right,
yeah, we got that unlocked.
I do want to talk about the difficulty of a bottom lane tier list in general, because I feel like this is one of the roles that is the hardest to judge. Their laning with the support, their output in team fights is so dependent on what the rest of the team sets them up to do. So for me, so much of this is a subjective look of how I think they're doing in situations that they're put in. So was it a hard team fight? Was it an easy team fight? And how do they perform based on those expectations?
Absolutely. It's the role with arguably the least agency in the game, and so therefore their output is really team dependent. And I tried to go a little bit more data driven than Jat, so you're getting kind of 2 different looks based off that a little bit. And so we have Sneaky agreed at the top. Absolutely, hands down, I think the best AD carry in the league. All his stats are great. He doesn't receive too much help from his team on the lower end of that. Does great in laning phase, has huge DPS output in the actual game, and they have fast games as well, so it's not like his numbers are getting inflated.
Yeah, and one thing that I noticed about C9's bottom lane in general as well is how much lane pressure they exert, as well as still having the team fight output, which is what puts Sneaky on top for me. And I think the reason I have Double Lift at number 2, whereas Mark has him at 4th, is when I looked at turret taking stats in the early game, Team Liquid often breaks the bottom lane first turret as the first turret of the game and very rarely lose it as the first turret of the game. So they're always exerting pressure down there, and then it's just about how consistently can they transition that into the teamfight phase. And Doublelift outplays so many bad situations, but then you're wondering why he's in the bad situations in the first place.
And that's kind of what we get to when we talk about this TL stat where they can't win any games that they're losing, and AD carry is supposed to be your most, consistent position. It does feel like part of that volatility does rest on the aggressive playmaking of Doublelift. His stats aren't great, but the guy that we have to talk about, elephant in the room, Cody-san. Hardest person to put down on this list, hands down. His stats are nuts.
If you just look at Cody-san's stats, 89.8% kill participation percentage, which is higher than anyone has had in NALCS history through 14 games. 40% of his team's damage, highest DPM for an AD carry. You could make an argument for Cody-san to be MVP. Yet, when we're ranking this guy, coming into the list, before we looked at stats, we're like, yeah, I'm not sure where Cody-san is, maybe somewhere in the middle. So it's weird in this situation because I think there have been a lot of games where enemy teams haven't necessarily focused him because maybe they're not expecting him to be a hyper carry, or the fact that he doesn't put out that much pressure in the lane on his own and is so good in teamfights.
His laning stats are pretty much the only thing that he doesn't top the charts at, and they do play around bot lane a fair amount. You think about the coordination between Afromu and Meteos always getting kills down there, and that's why he has such high kill participation.
Yeah.
But do you really fault him for being able to follow up on his playmakers and people playing so much around him? I have a hard time doing that.
Yeah, I think I was very close to putting Cody-san #1, but the thing that stopped me from doing it was the fact that 100 Thieves doesn't actually have that much lane pressure despite getting a lot of lane ganks from Meteos. So they more often lose their bottom lane turret first than take the enemy turret with Meteos ganking so much. So Cody-san is not the one getting the advantages, even if he's amazing in teamfights.
Well, you both have the same cluster of 4 at the top, however, in different order. Where things start to get a little different, though, is where Arrow is placed on your list, Jad, as compared to Mark's.
And this is the toughest one. And
oh, yeah.
I see Arrow as with some of the worst laning stats in the game as far as the CS differential. And I think a lot of that is just the 2 Draven games where he stubbornly picked Draven, blind into Caitlyn matchups and lost heavily. Because when I look at the success cases for Optic, Arrow is still playing out of his mind. So that kind of overpowered some of the statistical things I saw from this guy because I don't think he's got a great support. I think Optic has had the weakest top lane in the league the whole year. So he hasn't been playing with much of a front line and still, from the eye test, looking pretty good to me.
Yeah, I think the eye test definitely passes that, but like you said, there's so many problems when you look at his stats. He's by far the worst CSD at different benchmarks in the game. His DPM's not super impressive. He's dying a lot. You see that strange counter pick like, okay, yeah, you want to play Draven because you need to kind of carry for your team, but you picked it in the bad situation. I don't just forgive that as easily.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it was really tough for Arrow. He's one of the guys who also, if I'm going to, reward Cody-san at the top, I got to hold it against him, despite the fact that I do think he's much better than the 9th AD carry.
In a more statistically driven take on the tier list. Lastly, I want to talk about Apollo, kind of flip-flopping for you two. You got Apollo higher on your side, Mark, whereas you have him far lower on yours, Jad.
Yeah, and I think this is, of all the tier lists we've done top lane and mid lane, this was way harder to do.
Yeah.
And I think one thing I realized is that we have a lot of really good AD carries in North America. It felt awful to put Apollo at #9, but I didn't see him shining well above any of these other guys. And it's really difficult because I didn't see huge weaknesses, even in Deftly, who I have as 10th. He's been a very reliable damage dealer for this team. And I think there's a reason no team has thought about subbing out their AD carry, because all of them have kind of done what they need to do when given the chance.
Yeah, especially at different points in the season. Like we talked about Stixay, like, oh my God, this guy looks awful for the first 3 weeks. And then suddenly CLG has this massive resurgence completely off the back of his great play on Kalista, Tristan, all these different champions. And then you look at his stats, he's in the middle, Deftly in the middle, and you're left with this list of players who are all really good, deserve to be in the LCS, but it's just really hard to differentiate from the bottom half down.
I do think it is also interesting, too, just given what our first matchup of the day is, and if we kind of transition towards that Echo Fox versus Clutch Gaming, taking a look at how you guys have the ADCs in this matchup stacked up against each other, given maybe a slight edge to Altec, but honestly, they were a bit abused yesterday in the or not yesterday, last week in the bot lane.
Yeah, last week was terrible for Echo Fox's bottom lane, and I think they acknowledged that in one of the games for Altec against Deftly. His DPM difference was like over 800, which is normally more than an AD carry does in a game.
Right.
But the rest of the season for Altec, I think, has actually been pretty good. When he had lane priority with Kalista picks, they were able to do well when all the focus is elsewhere. So based on kills, assists, and some of the overall pressure taken out last week, he's actually better than this, but that last week was too hard to overlook.
I mean, there you got it right there, their laning stats from the last few games.
And you have to look at kind of what happened in context. Like they played against Zaya Rakan. It didn't feel like they were aware of that heading into 8.4. They got smashed by that a fair amount. Dardoch doesn't play around their bot lane very often. They're much more of a top map focused team. So when they get this big camp down the bot lane and losing matchups, they can get exploited a little bit. It is true, though, that Altec has the highest death percentage in the league, does seem to die too much. EchoFox games are very bloody, so it's no surprise he has good KDA stats still. But it is a little concerning for him that they have bad laning stats. They don't get much help, it's fair to say, but he was one of the ones that was also kind of hard to place.
All righty, well, before we get into predictions and win conditions, we're going to get a quick word from D-Lim.
I think that our mid game is actually pretty good, if not top tier, especially in the North American LCS. A lot of people kind of attribute us to not make that many plays and then kind of win, but there are reasons why the other team can't make plays on us in the mid game, with our vision being set up really well and us going for really smart objectives and trading objectives when we need to. So I think through our mid game, we've been snowballing games a lot, and even when we're behind, because our early game stats aren't that good, we've been consistently winning games through our mid game. It's exciting. Anytime I do these pre-game interviews, it seems like we win, so I'm excited for this buff. And EchoFox is the best team in NALCS, if not top 2. So if we beat them, I think it'll show that, at least in the best of ones, that we can compete with anyone.
I hadn't thought about the pre-game interview buff. Have we been tracking that? What's on that? I was going to say, what's the success rate of the pre-game interviews in wins? We should start pairing those against your guys' predictions.
Perhaps.
That could be fun for the future. But diving into this discussion, Clutch Gaming versus EchoFox, it is the top team in the league against a team sitting in third. But I think what's really interesting is our continuing conversations around Clutch Gaming and how much of a puzzle this team really is in terms of how good are they really.
Well, you kind of heard what D-Lim was saying there about how strong their mid game is. People can't take advantage of them, so they do a great job against teams that they are better than. They don't make these same mistakes that a lot of other teams in the league are making and dropping games to teams lower than them. But at the same time, their ceiling is something that I think is in question for us because they don't have very strong wins.
They still actually don't have a quality win. When we look at the standings, there is a line you can draw that they have not beaten. So anyone in the top 5, they are winless against, and they're undefeated of anyone in the bottom 5. So to me, that makes them a 5th to 6th place team if that stays consistent.
Yeah, especially given that TSM, one of their games was that crazy Apollo stealing everything in sight game. TSM could literally become the line had they lost one game.
It's a weird contrast between, they've picked up enough wins, they've been consistent enough to be the 3rd place team.
For sure.
But come playoff time, when you have to play the 6th place team or the 5th place team, all of a sudden their odds of winning seem to go right out the window.
Yeah, or even in these next few weeks where they have to play Team Liquid, 100 Thieves, and EchoFox as 3 of their 4 games.
Yep.
How strong will they finish the season? Because the time is now for Clutch Gaming to be able to prove themselves, but I still don't think they have proven it, even if they sit in 3rd place.
Oh my goodness. All right, well, with predictions, that's where I want to move next, kind of get some emphasis on who you guys think is going to win this first one. So let's throw those up onto the board. Oh, before we do that, actually, last week, you guys went 3-2 against our audience. So it felt only natural to bring the audience back into this one and see if they can give you a run for money again. So let's roll that clip. Let's see who they predicted for today's matches.
James, who do you think is going to win, Clutch Gaming or EchoFox?
EchoFox.
All right, we got FlyQuest, we got CLG. Who do you like?
Not even close.
CLG it is. All right. Optic Gaming versus Cloud9. Who do you guys think?
That's a tough one. Cloud9, I think.
Hoping for Team Liquid, double fan. So might have to cross my fingers on that one. It could be a toss-up. TSM's been looking strong lately, but I think Team Liquid can clinch it if they keep their synergy and their stuff together with their jungle.
Golden Guardians, because they've beaten a lot of good teams so far. They beat EchoFox, which is the leading team. So I think they're just trying to prove themselves.
Copy that.
I love it. I love it. Some bold predictions.
The CLG prediction stuck with the
CLG. Oh, yeah, man. I love it. Joel overruled. And that's the way it shall be.
There's a lot of differences there.
So here's the big difference between you guys only comes in game 1, where Mark is going for Clutch. We'll get to that in a moment. I want to take a look at where the audience disagrees with the both of you, and that's going to come in the last 2 games of the day. Team Liquid, first of all, TSM might want that jersey back, by the way. Voting for Team Liquid when you're wearing a TSM jersey, Rude as hell. But all right, let's talk about this. Team Liquid, let's justify the win against TSM.
Well, I think it's probably one of the closer games of the day as well, so it's not like a big surprise to go one way or the other. I think Jad and I have been talking a lot about how TAL is still inconsistent. They don't seem to play well from behind. TSM generally gets leads early on, and they seem like they've been improving over time.
Yeah, and I think both of these teams are wildly inconsistent. We know that Team Liquid smashed TSM in the first game of the year, and I also don't think Team Liquid has improved much from that point, whereas TSM has improved a little bit. So neither of these teams are as strong as you expected them to be coming into the year.
We've also got the wildly bold Golden Guardians prediction at the end of the day.
Those are the ones that get you, Dash.
I know. Hey, man, they've picked up a win per week here in the last few.
Second round robin, Golden Guardians has a 500 record, which is about the same as what 100 Thieves has been able to put out. So not as crazy as you would think when you look at recency.
All right, but seeing as how you two are split on the first matchup, I did want to bring in one more analyst, and that would be Kubo. Kubo calls it, so let's take a look.
All right. This is a fake out right here. So we filmed this morning. He's never.
Oh! What did he see Alltech and Adrian in the bowl?
Yeah.
He saw Alltech and Adrian was like, nope.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah, he took a look at that bowl.
About the EchoFox bowl. The same food was in both bowls.
I like how you took it out too. Like,
yes.
Do you give it back if he gets it right?
No, you don't reward defeat.
You reward him for getting it right.
No, you don't reward defeat. Only the winner. And Kubo chose the winner.
And he picked
Clutch Gaming. You should be happy. Why are you arguing
I'm saying
for
you can take it out, but does he get that treat later if he gets it right?
Eventually.
Look, we only got 2.5 minutes. So, Mark, given that you've chosen Clutch and you've chosen EchoFox, we're going to do win conditions, split down the middle just like that. Mark, lay it on me.
So the reason I'm picking Clutch a little bit here is because I've been getting a lot of shade from them.
Hold up. You guys hearing this?
I think they got
headsets
No,
on.
they have headsets on.
Not hearing it.
Apollo
that's unfortunate.
and Solo both called me out at different points, despite the fact that Jad has them finishing 6th. I don't know why I get the hate here from this team, but apparently I'm calling them out. So this is my chance. They're like, please win this game. I am picking them now.
All right, how do they do it? How do they do it?
Got a Clutch Faith.
Yeah, so I got the Clutch Faith for at least today, so if I get it wrong, I can be like, there, that's why. But I hope they beat up the bot lane. It was something that we've seen a little bit against EchoFox. Apollo and Hakuho sometimes have some good counter picks. We've seen them play Xayah Rakan. They play Morgana to get some advantage, so I want to see them go for that strategy. The other thing you need to do is track Dardoch. He's an absolute beast. He will destroy your top side of the map, and he does go bot lane sometimes, so figure out what his game plan is and stop him from influencing what you're going to try to do bot lane.
All right, Jad, how did the #1 team stay on top?
I mean, the same way they got there. So Huni is pretty good. You should probably continue to play through him. I think they overthink it sometimes when they're trying to make too many plays bottom lane, because I think Dardoch and Huni as a duo are just so far above so many other jungle top lane duos that they can win through that and then let Phoenix's strong laning, let Alltech's strong team fighting kind of carry them through. I don't think they have to overcomplicate things against Clutch.
Right. Well, some thoughts from our experts. It's a really hype first matchup of the day, though, so let's waste no more time, and send it up to the casters. Guys, take it away.
We're trapped in here. They won't let us